The sound of her youngest daughter's cough echoed through the cramped apartment at 3 in the morning, and Aria Donovan knew she had exactly $47 left until the end of the month. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing away the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. The twins, barely 6 years old, slept fitfully in the double bed they shared, while her eldest 9-year-old Emma coughed again from the sofa bed. The medicine cost money. The rent was overdue. The electricity bill had a bright red final noter stamped across it. Aria had applied to 23 jobs in the past week alone. Cashier positions, warehouse work, night shifts at convenience stores, anything that would let her work around childcare, anything that would keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. But every application disappeared into silence or came back with the same answer. Overqualified, underqualified, not the right fit, position filled. She wasn't asking for miracles. She just wanted to work. The rumors had started circulating through her apartment complex about 3 months ago. Whispers about new businesses opening in the renovated district downtown, businesses that paid well and asked few questions. The wealthier residents of the city pretended not to notice the pale figures who moved through the shadows after sunset, who conducted their affairs in the restored Victorian mansions that had been bought up by mysterious investors. Everyone knew the truth, even if no one said it aloud. The vampires had returned to the city, establishing their presence openly for the first time in over a century. The government had signed treaties, laws had been passed. Blood banks now had special donation programs with anonymous recipients. The world had changed, adapted, moved forward, and Aria was desperate enough not to care what her potential employers looked like, as long as they paid a living wage. She found the address scrawled on a card that someone had left in the building's laundry room. An elegant script that spelled out Thornhaven Estate, with an address in the newly renovated quarter and a single line below it. Positions available for those willing to serve with discretion. The building itself took her breath away when she arrived the next evening, having begged her elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen to watch the children for 2 hours. 3 stories of pale stone and dark windows, surrounded by iron gates that looked like they belonged in a museum. Gas lamps flickered along the walkway, though Aria knew they had to be electric replicas. Everything about the place screamed old money, old power, old danger. A woman with porcelain skin and silver hair answered the door. Her eyes were the color of blood rubies, and when she smiled, Aria caught a glimpse of elongated canines. "I'm here about the job posting," Aria said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Any job. I can clean, I can organize, I can manage accounts or assist with correspondence. I have a business degree, though it's been a few years since I've used it. I'm a hard worker. I don't cause problems, I just need steady employment." The vampire woman studied her with an expression that might have been amusement or pity. "We don't typically hire humans for household positions. The hours are unconventional." "I can work nights," Aria said quickly. "I can work any hours you need. I have 3 children to feed. I'm not asking for charity, just a chance to work." Something shifted in the woman's expression. "Wait here." The door closed, leaving Aria standing in the cold evening air. She wrapped her thin jacket tighter around herself, counting the minutes. She'd give it 10 more before she had to leave to relieve Mrs. Chen. When the door opened again, it wasn't the silver-haired woman who stood there. The man who appeared in the doorway was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Aria had ever seen. Tall and lean with the kind of presence that seemed to fill all available space. He had hair as white as fresh snow that fell to his shoulders and skin like marble in moonlight. His eyes were a deep crimson that seemed to glow from within. And he wore what looked like a tailored suit from another century, all dark silk and silver buttons, and a high collar that gave him an aristocratic air. "You're the one asking for work," he said, and his voice was like velvet draped over steel. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, sir, I can provide references, though they're a few years old. I'm reliable and I learn quickly. Whatever you need, I can do it." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "Do you know who I am?" Aria swallowed. "You're vampire. That's all I need to know. I'm not here to cause trouble or pry into your business. I just need employment." "I am Valerian Noctis," he said, each word precise and weighted, Lord of the Eastern Territories and King of the Nightborn Court. "This estate serves as my primary residence in your city. The work we require is not simple housekeeping." Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her chin up. A king. She was speaking to vampire royalty, and here she was in her second-hand jacket with holes in her shoes, begging for work. "I'm still interested, whatever the position entails." Valerian's expression remained unreadable. "You have children." 3 daughters. "They're my responsibility, not anyone else's. I won't let them interfere with my work." "How old?" 9, 6, and 6. "Twins." He was quiet for a long moment, those crimson eyes seeming to look straight through her, reading things she didn't want to show. Finally, he stepped back from the doorway. "Come inside, we'll discuss terms." The interior of Thornhaven Estate was even more breathtaking than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over rooms filled with antique furniture and artwork that probably cost more than everything Aria had ever owned combined. Valerian led her through a series of corridors to a study lined with books that smelled of leather and age. He gestured to a chair across from a massive desk. "Sit." Aria sat, perching on the edge of the seat, too nervous to relax. Valerian moved to stand by the window, his back to her as he gazed out at the darkening city. "My court requires someone to manage human affairs. Correspondence with mortal businesses, coordination of supply contracts, maintenance of our public records and legal documentation. The previous person in this position retired 3 months ago, and we have been without adequate assistance since then." "I can do that," Aria said immediately. "I managed the business accounts for a consulting firm before my children were born. I understand discretion and professional boundaries. The hours would be 7 in the evening until 3 in the morning, 5 days a week. You would work here, in this estate, surrounded by my people. Some humans find that unsettling. I need the work more than I need comfort." He turned to face her, and something flickered across his features, respect perhaps, or recognition. "Your honesty is refreshing. Most humans who come here either grovel or posture. You do neither. I don't have energy for games. I have $47 to last me until the end of the month and 3 children who depend on me. Pride is a luxury I can't afford." Valerian moved to sit behind his desk, the motion fluid and precise. "The position pays $4,000 a month, with health benefits that would extend to your children. You would also receive an advance of 2 months' salary upon accepting the position." Aria's breath caught. 4,000. That was more than double what she'd been making at her last job, the one she'd lost when Emma got sick and she'd missed too many days caring for her. "I accept. You haven't heard all the terms yet. I don't care. That salary would change everything for my family." "What are the other terms?" A ghost of something that might have been a smile touched his lips. "You would be under my personal protection, which means anyone who harms you answers to me. You would have access to the estate and its resources as needed for your work. You would be expected to maintain absolute discretion about everything you see and hear within these walls. And you would be required to undergo a medical examination to ensure you're healthy enough for the work." "The medical exam, is that because of the blood thing?" She forced herself to ask the question directly. "No, I don't employ anyone who donates blood as part of their position. We have proper contracts with consenting donors for such needs. The examination is simply because my household staff receives comprehensive medical care, and I need to know what baseline we're working with." The tightness in Aria's chest eased slightly. "Then I accept all terms. When do I start?" "Tomorrow evening. Be here at 6:30. Lysandra will show you to your office and explain the filing systems." He opened a drawer in the desk and withdrew a checkbook, writing with smooth, deliberate strokes. "This is your advance. $8,000. Get yourself appropriate professional attire, take care of whatever debts are most pressing, and ensure your children have what they need. I expect my employees to work without the distraction of financial panic." He slid the check across the desk, and Aria stared at it like it might vanish if she breathed wrong. $8,000. Enough to pay the back rent, the utilities, the medical bills. Enough to buy groceries without counting every penny. Enough to get her car fixed so she wouldn't have to rely on unreliable buses. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you help me like this? You don't know me." Valerian's crimson eyes met hers, and she saw something ancient and unfathomable in their depths. "You came here asking for work, not charity. You were willing to do whatever was necessary to provide for your family. That kind of determination is rare, and it deserves to be rewarded. Consider the advance both practical and a test. I want to see what you do with resources when they're provided." Aria took the check with trembling hands. "I won't let you down. See that you don't. Lysandra will provide you with contact information. If anything prevents you from arriving tomorrow, you will notify us immediately. Punctuality and communication are essential in my household." She stood, clutching the check like a lifeline. "Thank you. I'll be here." As she turned to leave, Valerian's voice stopped her. "Your daughter's cough, the eldest. It's keeping her from sleeping properly." Aria froze. "How did you know that?" "I can hear the strain in your voice, see the exhaustion that comes from interrupted nights. Have her examined by Dr. Reeves at the West Side Medical Center. Tell them I sent you. The care will be covered under your benefits retroactive to today." Tears burned at the back of Aria's eyes, but she blinked them away. "Why are you being so kind? Because you asked for work, not pity, and that matters. Now go. Your neighbor is anxious about the time. Aria fled before the tears could fall. Before she could break down in front of this impossibly powerful, impossibly generous vampire king who had just thrown her a lifeline when she'd been drowning. The next evening, she arrived at Thornhaven Estate at 6:15, dressed in the best of the professional clothes she'd been able to afford with a careful portion of her advance. The rest had gone to rent, utilities, Emma's doctor appointment, and groceries, real groceries. Not the cheapest options, but actual nutritious food her children could thrive on. Lysandra, the silver-haired vampire from the previous night, greeted her with a more welcoming expression. Lord Valerian mentioned you were prompt. Good. Punctuality is valued here. Come, I'll show you your workspace. The office was a dream. A real desk with a comfortable chair, 2 monitors already set up, filing cabinets that looked antique but were clearly modified with modern locks, and a window that overlooked the estate's back garden. Everything was organized and waiting for her, from the supply of pens to the labeled folders explaining the current projects. You'll be handling correspondence first, Lysandra explained, pulling up several email accounts on one of the monitors. These are the business inquiries, contract negotiations, and public relations matters. Everything is screened before it reaches this inbox, so you won't have to worry about threats or harassment. Your job is to respond appropriately, maintain our schedules, and flag anything that requires Lord Valerian's direct attention. Aria settled into the chair, her fingers already itching to start organizing the inbox she could see was overflowing. I can do this. What's the priority system? Anything marked urgent needs same-day response. Everything else within 48 hours. You'll find templates in this folder for common responses. Feel free to personalize them as appropriate. Lord Valerian prefers genuine communication over form letters. They spent the next hour reviewing systems, protocols, and expectations. Aria absorbed everything like a sponge, taking detailed notes and asking questions when clarification was needed. By the time Lysandra left her to begin work, she felt confident in her understanding of the role. The work itself was engaging in a way her previous jobs had never been. She was managing communications with shipping companies, coordinating with lawyers about property acquisitions, scheduling meetings between Valerian and various business contacts, and maintaining meticulous records of everything. It required attention to detail, professional writing skills, and the ability to multitask, all things she'd excelled at before motherhood had forced her to set aside her career. Around 10 o'clock, there was a soft knock on her office door. Enter, she called, expecting Lysandra. Valerian stepped inside instead, carrying a tray with what looked like tea and small sandwiches. Lysandra informed me you've been working without break. Humans require regular sustenance. Aria blinked at him, startled by the gesture. I was going to take a break soon. I wanted to get through the urgent emails first. Admirable but impractical. You're no use to me if you collapse from neglect. He set the tray on the corner of her desk. Earl Grey with honey and sandwiches from the kitchen. The household staff ensures we always have appropriate food for human employees. Thank you. She reached for the tea, grateful for the warmth. I've already cleared 80% of the urgent inbox. There's a contract negotiation that needs your attention. The shipping company is trying to adjust terms in their favor. I've drafted a counteroffer, but you should review it before I send anything. Valerian moved to stand behind her, reading over her shoulder. His presence was overwhelming. This close, he radiated a kind of power that made the air feel heavier, charged with something ancient and dangerous. But he smelled like winter nights and old books, and there was something oddly comforting about having him near. Your counteroffer is excellent, he said after a moment. You've caught the discrepancies I noticed and addressed them with exactly the right level of firmness. Send it. You're sure? I don't want to overstep. I hired you because I need someone capable of handling these matters. If I questioned every decision you made, I might as well do the work myself. He moved to lean against the edge of her desk, studying her with those unsettling crimson eyes. How was your daughter's appointment? She has a respiratory infection. Nothing serious, but it needed antibiotics. The doctor was incredibly thorough, and there was no charge. Aria met his gaze. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. As I said, you're under my protection now. That extends to your family. A sick child means a distracted employee, and I prefer my people functioning at full capacity. Is that the only reason? Something flickered in his expression, too quick to identify. Does it matter? I suppose not. Either way, I'm grateful. They sat in companionable silence while she ate one of the sandwiches. It was surprisingly good, real roasted turkey, fresh vegetables, cheese that actually had flavor. The kind of food she hadn't been able to afford in far too long. You're different from most humans who work with vampires, Valerian said after a while. No fear, no excessive fascination, you're simply practical. Fear doesn't pay the bills, and fascination seems like a waste of energy when there's work to be done. Aria sipped her tea. Besides, you've been nothing but professional and generous. Why would I be afraid? Because I'm dangerous. Because everyone in this household could kill you without effort. Because I am king of creatures that once hunted your kind for sport. But you don't now. Things changed. The world adapted. She set down her teacup, meeting his eyes directly. And frankly, humans are plenty dangerous to each other without supernatural help. I've been more afraid of landlords and debt collectors than I am of you. Valerian laughed an actual laugh, rich and genuine. You continue to surprise me, Aria Donovan. It's a rare quality, I'll take that as a compliment. It was intended as one. He straightened, moving toward the door. Continue your work. I'll be in my study if you need anything. Lysandra or any of the household staff can direct you. After he left, Aria found herself smiling as she returned to the emails. There was something almost absurd about her situation working for vampire royalty, having actual conversations with a creature who was probably centuries old, feeling safer in this estate full of dangerous beings than she had in her own apartment complex. But it was working. She was working, and for the first time in years, she felt like she might actually be able to build something stable for her daughters. The weeks that followed fell into a steady rhythm. Aria arrived each evening at 6:30, worked until 3 in the morning, and returned home to sleep while the twins went to preschool and Emma attended school. Mrs. Chen watched them in the evenings for a reasonable rate, and for the first time in memory, Aria wasn't constantly anxious about money. She was good at her job, excellent even. The correspondence flowed smoothly under her management, contracts were negotiated to favorable terms, and Valerian's schedule ran like clockwork. The other members of the household began to warm to her presence. Lysandra brought her tea without being asked. The household steward, an ancient vampire named Caius with eyes like polished silver, actually smiled when she organized the supply closets with ruthless efficiency. And Valerian himself seemed to find excuses to visit her office more frequently than strictly necessary. He would appear with questions about correspondence, then linger to discuss philosophy or history. He brought her books from his personal library when he learned she loved reading. He asked about her daughters with genuine interest, remembering their names and the little details she mentioned about their personalities. Emma wants to be a veterinarian, Aria told him one evening in her third week, pulling up photos on her phone. She's obsessed with animals. The twins, Lily and Rose, they're complete opposites despite being identical. Lily is fierce and protective, Rose is gentle and thoughtful. They balance each other. Valerian studied the photos with an expression she couldn't quite read. They look like you. The same determination in their eyes. They've had to be strong. I've tried to shield them from how difficult things were. But children are perceptive. And now? Are things better? Immeasurably. We moved to a new apartment last week, 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, no mold or broken appliances. The girls have their own room finally. I can afford school supplies and decent clothes and food that isn't pasta and canned vegetables. Aria's voice tightened with emotion. You gave me that, this job, the benefits, the advance. You changed our lives. You earned it. I've had assistants before, and none have been as efficient or capable as you. Still, I won't forget what you did for us. Valerian reached out as if to touch her hand, then seemed to think better of it, his hand falling back to his side. You asked for work, not charity. You had the courage to walk up to a vampire estate and demand a chance. That deserves recognition. Their eyes met, and Aria felt something shift in the air between them, a tension that had nothing to do with fear or professional courtesy. He was beautiful in an otherworldly way, all pale elegance and ancient power, but there was something beneath that perfection, loneliness perhaps. A kind of isolation that came from being set apart from everyone else. Why did you really hire me? She asked softly. The truth. He was quiet for a long moment, his crimson eyes reflecting the lamplight. Because you reminded me what it means to fight for something that matters. I've lived for 5 centuries, Aria. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched the world transform itself a dozen times over. Somewhere in all those years, I forgot what it feels like to struggle, to need, to push forward despite impossible odds. You walked through my door with nothing but determination and hope, and it was refreshing, real. I'm nothing special, just a desperate mother trying to survive. You're wrong. Desperation breaks most people. You let it fuel you instead. The moment stretched between them, weighted with things neither of them seemed ready to say aloud. Then Valerian stepped back, the professional mask sliding back into place. It's nearly midnight. You should take your break. There's fresh food in the kitchen. After he left, Aria sat staring at her computer screen without seeing it, her heart beating faster than it should. She was developing feelings for him. That much was becoming impossible to deny. The way he looked at her, spoke to her, the careful kindness beneath his regal exterior. It was dangerous and foolish and completely inappropriate given their positions. But it was also undeniable. The situation became more complicated a week later when Aria arrived to find the estate in a state of controlled chaos. Vampires moved through the halls with urgent purpose, and Lysandra met her at the door with tension written across her perfect features. "There's a situation," Lysandra said without preamble. "Members of a rival court have challenged Lord Valerian's authority over this territory. They're arriving tonight for formal negotiations. What do you need me to do?" "Stay in your office and continue your work. Don't leave that room unless explicitly summoned. Some of the visiting vampires are less civilized than our household. Lord Valerian has declared you under his protection, but that won't matter if you accidentally cross paths with someone looking to cause trouble." Unease coiled in Aria's stomach. "Is he in danger? He's the most powerful vampire in 3 territories. He's not the one you should worry about." Lysandra's expression softened slightly. "But your concern is noted. Stay safe, Aria. We've all grown quite fond of you." The evening passed with agonizing slowness. Aria tried to focus on work, but every sound in the hallway made her tense. Around 9 o'clock she heard voices, many voices, speaking in languages she didn't recognize. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, some primal instinct recognizing the presence of predators. She forced herself to keep working, to stay focused on the contract revisions she was reviewing. Whatever was happening in the rest of the estate, she needed to trust that Valerian knew what he was doing. The scream that echoed through the building an hour later shattered that resolve. Aria was on her feet, and moving before conscious thought caught up with instinct. She knew that voice, Lysandra's voice, sharp with alarm. She burst into the hallway to find chaos. A vampire she didn't recognize had Lysandra pinned against the wall, his hand around her throat. He was smaller than the vampires she knew, with dark hair and eyes that burned with malice. "You think Valerian's protection means anything? He's grown weak, playing human politics while the old powers fade. Let her go." Aria's voice cut through the confrontation, sharp and clear despite the terror coursing through her veins. The strange vampire's head snapped toward her, and his lips pulled back in a predatory grin. "And what do we have here? A human, wandering where she shouldn't be. How deliciously stupid." He released Lysandra, who dropped to the floor gasping, and moved toward Aria with liquid grace. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she held her ground. Running would only trigger his chase instinct. "I'm under Lord Valerian's protection," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Harming me would be a direct challenge to his authority. That's the point, little mortal. Your king has forgotten what fear tastes like. Perhaps your death will remind him." The vampire lunged, and Aria threw herself backward, knowing she was too slow, knowing she'd just made a fatal mistake by leaving her office. But the killing blow never landed. Valerian materialized between them like a storm-given form, one hand catching the attacker by the throat and slamming him into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. His eyes blazed with fury, and power radiated from him in waves that made the air itself feel heavy. "You dare." His voice was barely above a whisper, but it echoed with the weight of centuries. "You dare threaten what is mine in my own domain." The other vampire scrabbled at Valerian's grip, suddenly not predator but prey. "She's just a human. She is under my personal protection. She is a member of my household, and you have just violated the most sacred law of our kind by threatening a protected human in the home of their patron." Valerian's grip tightened. "Do you understand what you've done?" Other vampires had appeared in the hallway. Caius, Lysandra struggling to her feet, and 3 others Aria didn't recognize who must have been part of the visiting delegation. One of them, a female with hair like spun silver and elaborate robes, stepped forward. "Lord Valerian." Mikhail acted without the delegation's knowledge or consent. "His actions do not reflect our court's intentions. Then you will take him back to your court and ensure he faces appropriate punishment. But first he will apologize to both Lysandra and Aria for his transgression." Valerian released the vampire, who collapsed to the floor. Mikhail looked up at Aria with hatred and fear warring in his eyes, but he ground out, "My apologies for the offense. Now leave my sight," Valerian said coldly. "And count yourself fortunate that I'm showing mercy in front of witnesses. If you ever come near anyone under my protection again, I will end you slowly enough that you'll beg for the sun." The visiting vampires departed quickly, taking Mikhail with them. Once they were gone, Valerian turned to Aria, his expression transforming from fury to concern in an instant. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. Lysandra is already healing." Vampires recover quickly. He moved toward her, his hands hovering near her shoulders as if he wanted to check her for injuries, but wasn't sure he should touch her. What were you thinking leaving your office? You could have been killed. I heard Lysandra scream. I couldn't just hide while someone was in trouble. You're human, fragile mortal. Running toward danger is what anyone decent would do, Aria interrupted. I know I can't fight vampires, but I couldn't just do nothing. Something fierce and possessive flashed through his eyes. You could have died. Do you understand that? If I had been 1 second slower, he cut himself off, his jaw clenching. But you weren't. You protected me just like you promised. I can't always be fast enough. I can't always be there. So what are you saying? That I should have let Lysandra be hurt without even trying to help? I'm saying he stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Finally, he said quietly, I'm saying that the thought of you being harmed is intolerable. I've lived for 5 centuries and faced every danger my kind can offer. But the sight of Mikhail moving toward you, the realization that I might be too late, it terrified me in a way nothing has in lifetimes. Aria's breath caught. Valerian, I know this is inappropriate. I'm your employer and there are 1,000 reasons this is impossible. But I need you to understand you're not just an employee to me anymore. You haven't been for weeks. You're brilliant and brave and infuriatingly reckless. And every evening I look forward to our conversations more than I've looked forward to anything in decades. Her heart was racing, and she could see from his expression that he could probably hear it. I feel the same way. I know I shouldn't, that this is complicated and probably foolish, but I can't help it. You've been kinder to me than anyone in my life. You see me, really see me, not just as a desperate mother or a struggling human, but as a person worth knowing. Valerian raised one hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently cupped her face. His skin was cool against hers, but the touch sent warmth flooding through her. I want to court you properly. I want to take you to dinner, bring you flowers, learn everything there is to know about you. But I need you to understand what that means. My world is dangerous. Tonight proved that. Being close to me puts you and your daughters at risk. Being poor put us at risk too. Humans aren't safe from other humans, let alone from the world at large. At least with you, I know you'll protect us. Always. With everything I am. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. But I need you to be sure. I'm asking you to let me into your life, into your heart. I'm asking you to trust me with the most precious things in your world, yourself and your children. I'm sure, Aria whispered. I've been sure for weeks. I just didn't think you could feel the same way. How could I not? You walked into my life with your fierce determination and your refusal to be diminished by circumstance. And you reminded me what it means to be human, not in the mortal sense, but in the essential sense. Compassion, courage, love. All the things immortality can dull if you're not careful. Then yes, I want this, I want you. He kissed her then, gentle and careful as if she might break. His lips were cool but soft, and the kiss held a tenderness that made her chest ache. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. I should get you home, Valerian said. It's late, and you've had enough excitement for one evening. What about my work? Can wait until tomorrow. Tonight I'm taking you home myself, and I'm ensuring your apartment's security measures are upgraded. If anyone thinks they can use you or your daughters to get to me, they'll find themselves facing consequences they can't imagine. The possessive protectiveness in his voice should have been alarming. Instead, it made Aria feel safer than she had in years. True to his word, Valerian drove her home in a sleek black car that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. He walked her to her door, checked every room in the apartment despite her protests, and spoke quietly to Mrs. Chen about enhanced security measures he would be implementing. You don't have to do all this, Aria said when they stood at her door, the early morning hours making the hallway feel intimate and surreal. Yes, I do. You're mine now, Aria. I protect what's mine. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Sleep well? I'll see you tomorrow evening. Valerian, thank you for everything. Thank me by staying safe. That's all I ask. The next few weeks transformed Aria's life in ways she'd never imagined. Valerian courted her with old-fashioned elegance. Flowers appeared in her office every evening. He took her to exclusive restaurants during her break times, and he sent books he thought she'd enjoy, with handwritten notes discussing the themes. He met her daughters on a carefully planned Saturday evening, arriving at their apartment with gifts that showed he'd been paying attention to everything Aria had told him. For Emma, a beautiful illustrated encyclopedia of animals with detailed notes about veterinary medicine. For Lily, a collection of adventure stories featuring fierce girl protagonists. For Rose, a set of watercolor paints and paper, since Aria had mentioned she loved to draw. The girls were initially wary of the imposing pale stranger with crimson eyes, but Valerian handled them with remarkable patience. He sat on their apartment floor, carefully examining Rose's artwork and listening to Emma explain her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. He told Lily stories about his travels to far-off places, making her eyes light up with wonder. "He's nice," Emma whispered to Aria in the kitchen while Valerian was helping Rose set up her watercolors at the table. "And he really likes you, Mom, I can tell." "I really like him too," Aria admitted. "Is he your boyfriend?" "Something like that, yes. How do you feel about that?" Emma considered carefully. "I think it's good. You smile more now, and you're not as tired all the time." Out of the mouths of babes, Aria thought. Her daughter was right. She was happy in a way she hadn't been in years. The constant anxiety had faded, replaced by a sense of security and possibility. But happiness, she was learning, was often fragile. The threat came in the form of an elegantly penned letter delivered to the estate 3 weeks after the confrontation with Mikhail. Lysandra brought it to Aria's office with a grave expression. "This arrived for Lord Valerian, but it concerns you. He wanted you to read it." The letter was from the High Council of Vampire Courts, written in flowing script on heavy parchment. As Aria read, her blood ran cold. The council had heard about Valerian's relationship with a human. They were concerned about the impropriety of a vampire king forming romantic attachments to mortals under his protection and employ. They were demanding his appearance before the council to explain his actions and face potential censure. If he refused, they threatened to strip him of his territorial rights and dissolve his court. "This is because of me," Aria whispered. "They're using our relationship against him. They're using it as an excuse," Lysandra corrected. "The truth is that several older courts have been looking for ways to challenge Lord Valerian's power for years. He's more progressive than they are, more willing to work with humans as equals. They see that as weakness. Your relationship just gave them ammunition. So what do? We? Lord Valerian will appear before the council and defend his choices. You will stay here, safe in the estate, protected by the household." "No," Aria stood, her mind racing. "If this is about me, I should be there. I can speak for myself. The council won't allow a human to address them directly. Then I'll make them allow it. Valerian treats humans as equals, right? It's time the council understood why that matters." When Valerian learned of her plan, they had their first real argument. "Absolutely not. I won't bring you into a room full of ancient vampires who view humans as either food or pets. It's too dangerous. It's my choice to make. They're attacking you because of me. I should be able to defend our relationship. Your defending it won't matter if one of them decides to make an example of you. Some of those vampires remember when humans were prey, Aria. They won't be swayed by logic or compassion. Then I'll appeal to their pride, their sense of tradition. Whatever works." She moved to stand in front of him, placing her hands on his chest. "You've protected me from the beginning. Let me protect you now, even if it's just with words." His hands came up to cover hers, his expression torn. "I can't lose you. Do you understand that? I've lived for centuries thinking I was content alone, and then you walked into my life and reminded me what it means to feel. If something happened to you because of my selfishness, it's not selfish to love someone, isn't it? I knew the danger. I knew being close to me would put you at risk. But I pursued you anyway because I wanted you too much to let you go, and I made my own choice. I chose you knowing exactly what it meant." Aria squeezed his hands. "Let me stand with you, as an equal like you've always treated me." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were filled with resolve. "If I allow this and it goes against every instinct I have, you'll follow my lead completely. If I tell you to leave the council chamber, you leave immediately." "Agreed?" "Agreed. And the girls stay with Mrs. Chen with enhanced security that I'm arranging. If this goes badly, I won't have them used as leverage." "Of course." Valerian pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You're the bravest person I've ever known. Human or vampire, mortal or immortal, your courage outshines everyone." "I learned from the best," she murmured against his chest. The journey to the High Council took place 3 nights later. They traveled to an ancient estate outside the city, a sprawling Gothic mansion that looked like it had been transplanted directly from medieval Europe. Aria wore a professional dress that Valerian had insisted on buying her deep burgundy silk that made her look both elegant and formidable. The council chamber itself was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow, and 7 thrones arranged in a semicircle faced a single chair in the center of the room. The vampires who occupied those thrones were the oldest, most powerful of their kind beings who had walked the earth for a millennium or more. Valerian entered first, every inch the king. Aria followed a step behind, her chin high despite the weight of the ancient gazes falling on her. Lord Valerian Noctis, the central figure in tone. She was female, with hair like moonlight and eyes that held the depth of centuries. You stand accused of inappropriate conduct with a human under your protection. What say you? I say that my personal relationships are my own concern, as long as they violate no law of our kind, Valerian replied, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. And I bring before you the human in question, Aria Donovan, who is capable of speaking for herself. Humans do not address this council, another vampire said dismissively. He looked carved from ice, all sharp angles and cold disdain. Then perhaps it's time that changed, Valerian said. For centuries we've hidden from the world or ruled through fear. The modern age demands adaptation, integration, not isolation. And that begins with treating humans as partners, not property. Dangerous thinking, the ice-carved vampire said. Humans are short-lived and fragile. They cannot possibly understand our world. May I speak? Aria's voice rang out clearly, drawing every crimson gaze to her. She was terrified, but she forced herself to meet those ancient eyes. You say humans can't understand your world, but you don't understand ours either. You see us as fragile, temporary, beneath your notice. But our short lives make us fight harder for what matters. Every day is precious to us, every relationship valuable, because we know how quickly it can end. And what is your point, little mortal? The central vampire asked, something that might have been amusement in her tone. My point is that Valerian saw me as a person, not a charity case or a curiosity. When I came to him desperate and afraid, he gave me work, not pity. He treated me with respect, paid me fairly, ensured my family was cared for. And when we developed feelings for each other, he was honest about the dangers while still allowing me the dignity of making my own choices. Aria stepped forward, her hands clasped to keep them from shaking. You call his treatment of humans weakness. I call it evolution. The world has changed, and vampires who can't adapt will be left behind. Valerian understands that strength isn't just about power, it's about creating alliances, building trust, protecting what matters. Pretty words, the ice vampire said, but you're still human. In 50 years you'll be dead, and Lord Valerian will have compromised his position for a romance that was always doomed to be temporary. The words hit like a physical blow because they were true. Aria was mortal. Eventually, age would take her, and Valerian would be left alone again. She'd been trying not to think about that reality, but here it was, laid bare in front of the entire council. Before she could formulate a response, Valerian moved to stand beside her, his presence a shield against the council's disdain. You speak of temporary as if it diminishes value. Every moment with Aria is worth more than centuries of empty existence. She has given me purpose, reminded me what it means to fight for something beyond power and territory. If you can't understand that, then perhaps you're the ones who have become obsolete. Careful, young king, the central vampire said. You risk much for this human. I risk everything for her, Valerian said simply. Because she's worth it. Because a world where I can't love someone brave and brilliant and kind is not a world I want to rule. The council chamber fell silent. The ancient vampires exchanged glances, communicating in ways Aria couldn't perceive. Finally, the central vampire spoke. You present an interesting argument, both of you. She leaned forward, studying them with eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Very well. We will allow this relationship to continue. But know this, Lord Valerian, you will be watched carefully. If this human becomes a liability, if your territory suffers because of divided attention, we will revisit this matter. My territory thrives, Valerian said firmly. My court is stable, my alliance is strong, my business affairs in excellent order thanks to Aria's management. You'll find no cause for complaint there. See that we don't. The central vampire's gaze shifted to Aria. And you, human, you have shown courage in coming here. That is noted. But understand that you have also painted a target on yourself. There are those who will see you as a weakness to exploit. There are always targets on desperate single mothers, Aria said quietly. At least now I have someone powerful on my side. Something that might have been respect flickered through the ancient vampire's expression. Indeed. Go then, both of you. This matter is concluded. As they left the council chamber, Aria's legs nearly gave out with relief. Valerian caught her elbow, steadying her, and once they were outside in the cool night air, he pulled her into a fierce embrace. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, she admitted, her voice muffled against his chest. You were magnificent. You stood before beings who could have killed you with a thought and spoke with perfect conviction. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes blazing with pride and love. I have never been more certain that you're the one I want beside me, even knowing I'll die eventually. That this is temporary? Nothing about what I feel for you is temporary. Yes, your mortal life is short compared to mine, but I would rather have 50 years with you than an eternity without you. That's both romantic and heartbreaking. It's the truth. He kissed her forehead gently. And there are possibilities, ways that humans can be turned, if they choose it. If the time ever came that you wanted to extend your life to remain with me beyond your mortal years, that option exists. Aria's heart skipped. You mean become a vampire? Only if you wanted it. Only if the time came that you felt ready to make that choice. I would never force it, never even suggest it unless you brought it up first. But yes, the option exists. It was overwhelming to think about immortality, transformation, becoming something other than human. But it was also strangely reassuring to know that their relationship didn't have to have a predetermined expiration date. Let's table that discussion for now, she said. I think I've had enough life-changing moments for one evening. Agreed. Let's go home. The months that followed were the happiest of Aria's life. Her relationship with Valerian deepened into something solid and enduring. He was a constant presence in her life and her daughters' lives, treating them with the same respect and affection he showed her. Emma started calling him Uncle Val, and the twins adored him completely. Work at the estate continued to go well. Aria had become indispensable to Valerian's operations, managing everything from contract negotiations to diplomatic correspondence. She had proven herself so capable that other vampire courts began requesting her assistance with human relations matters, which led to Valerian creating an entire consulting division with Aria at its head. But the shadow of mortality still hung over them. Aria could feel the weight of it in quiet moments. When Valerian looked at her with such intensity it was almost painful. He was thinking about the future, about the limited time they had, and so was she. The decision came to a head one evening 8 months after they'd appeared before the council. Aria had been feeling run down, more tired than usual, and a routine checkup revealed a mass on her lung. The doctor's words had been clinical, professional, devastating. Early-stage cancer, very treatable in theory but aggressive. She told Valerian that night in his study, and watched the color drain from his already pale face. How long? He asked, his voice barely controlled. The doctor says with treatment, the survival rate is good. 80% chance of full recovery, and the 20% chance where it doesn't work. Aria couldn't answer. She just moved into his arms, letting him hold her while they both processed the news. Turn me, she said after a long silence. I know we talked about waiting, about letting it be my choice when the time was right. But the time is right now. I don't want to risk leaving you, leaving my daughters. If there's a way to ensure I survive this, I want to take it. The transmission is painful, Valerian said carefully. And it's permanent. Once you're turned, there's no going back. I know. I've researched it. I've thought about it. She pulled back to look at him. I want this, Valerian. I want a life with you, a real future. I want to see my daughters grow up, be there for their graduations and weddings and children of their own. I want time, real time, not the limited span I have as a mortal. And the risks? Becoming a vampire means giving up sunlight, changing your diet, adapting to an entirely different existence. I can handle it. With you beside me, I can handle anything. Valerian studied her face for a long moment, searching for doubt. When he found none, he nodded slowly. Then I'll arrange it. But we do this properly, you'll have time to prepare, to explain to your daughters, to say goodbye to your mortal life in a way that honors what it was. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Aria had difficult conversations with Emma, Lily, and Rose, explaining that she was sick but that Uncle Val had a way to help her get better. She didn't go into details about vampirism, they were too young for that, but she prepared them for changes, for the fact that she'd need to adjust her schedule and habits. Mrs. Chen, bless her, took the news with surprising equanimity. I knew there was something different about that man. He looks at you like you're his whole world. If he can keep you healthy and here for your girls, that's all that matters. The transformation itself took place in Valerian's private quarters at the estate, with Lysandra and Caius present to assist. Aria lay on a bed draped in dark silk, her heart pounding as Valerian sat beside her. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. Not changing my mind, do it. He brought his wrist to his mouth, biting down to open a vein. Dark blood welled up and he held it to her lips. Drink. You need my blood in your system before I take yours. The blood tasted like copper in winter nights and something indefinably ancient. Aria drank, feeling warmth spread through her veins, followed by a strange, tingling sensation that made her entire body feel hyper-aware. Now, Valerian said, and his fangs descended. He bit into her neck and the pain was sharp and sudden, but it faded quickly into a strange numbness. The world began to fade around the edges. She could hear her heartbeat slowing, feel her breath becoming shallow. Then Valerian's wrist was at her lips again, and she was drinking desperately, her body instinctively knowing this was survival. That's it, Valerian murmured. Let go of your mortal life. Let the transformation take you. I'm here. I'm with you. His voice was the last thing she heard before the world went dark. The change took 3 days. Aria drifted in and out of consciousness, her body remaking itself at a cellular level. She was dimly aware of Valerian's presence, his voice reading to her, his cool hand stroking her hair. The pain came and went in waves, but it was bearable because she knew what waited on the other side. When she finally opened her eyes, the world had transformed. Everything was sharper, clearer. She could hear Valerian's breathing from across the room, could smell the old leather of the books lining the walls, could see individual dust motes floating in the air. Her body felt strong in a way it never had before, as if she could run for miles without tiring. Aria? Valerian appeared at her side instantly. How do you feel? Different, good, strong. She sat up easily and the motion made her laugh. Really strong, is this normal? You're adjusting quickly, that's an excellent sign. He cupped her face, studying her eyes. They've changed, crimson now like mine. And my skin? Pale, beautiful, perfect. Aria moved to the mirror on the wall and gasped. The woman looking back at her was both familiar and utterly transformed. Her skin had taken on a luminous quality, pale as moonlight. Her eyes blazed red, and when she smiled experimentally, she caught a glimpse of fangs. I look like you, she whispered. You look like yourself, just evolved. Valerian came to stand behind her, his hands on her shoulders. How do you feel about it? It's strange, wonderful, terrifying. She leaned back against him. I'm going to need to learn so much, and I'll teach you everything. We have time now, Aria. Centuries of time if we want it. The reality of that hit her fully. She was immortal now. She would see her daughters grow up, grow old, perhaps even turn them someday if they chose it. She would have Valerian at her side for as long as she wanted. The cancer that had been threatening her life was gone, burned away in the transformation. Thank you, she said, turning in his arms. For giving me this. For giving us this. Thank me by living it fully. By being the fierce, brilliant, unstoppable force you've always been, just with more time to make an impact. They kissed, and it was different now. She could feel the connection between them on a deeper level, something primal and binding that came from sharing blood, from being the same kind of creature. It was intoxicating. The weeks that followed were an adjustment period. Aria had to learn to control her new strength, her enhanced senses, her hunger for blood. Valerian was patient, teaching her the rules that govern their kind, the etiquette and expectations of vampire society. She adapted quickly, her natural intelligence and determination serving her well. Her daughters adapted too, though Aria had to be more careful now around them. She worked nights still, but now it was by necessity rather than choice. Sunlight would burn her, force her to sleep during daylight hours. She arranged her schedules so she could be with the girls in the evenings before they went to bed, and Mrs. Chen continued to help during the day. You seem happier, Mom, Emma said one evening, studying her with the too perceptive gaze of a child who'd grown up watching her mother struggle. And healthier. I am, sweetheart. Uncle Val's medicine worked really well. That's good, I like when you smile. The High Council called Valerian to report on his territory's status 6 months after Aria's transformation. This time when they appeared before the council, Aria stood as his equal, a vampire in her own right. Though still young by their standards, the central vampire, who Aria had learned was named Seraphine and was over 2,000 years old, regarded her with something approaching approval. You have adapted well to your new nature, Aria Donovan. That speaks to strength of character. Thank you, Elder Seraphine. I'm honored to serve Lord Valerian's court. And how fares your territory, Lord Valerian? Another council member asked. Exceptionally well. Our business ventures have expanded. Our alliances with human governments are stronger than ever, and our court is stable and prosperous. Aria has developed several innovative programs for human-vampire integration that other territories have begun adopting. Innovation is not always wisdom, the ice-carved vampire said, but his objection sounded token rather than genuine. In this case it is both, Valerian replied. The world changes whether we will it or not. We can change with it, or be left behind as relics of a bygone age. Seraphine nodded slowly. Your point is well made. We will continue to observe your progress, but the council is satisfied with your leadership. You have proven that progressive thinking need not come at the expense of vampire tradition. As they left the council chambers this time, Aria felt triumphant rather than merely relieved. They'd proven themselves, built something that worked, created a model for how vampires and humans could coexist and even thrive together. We did it, she said to Valerian as they walked through the moonlit gardens surrounding the council estate. We actually changed their minds. You changed their minds, he corrected. Your courage, your innovations, your refusal to accept limitations, all of that made the difference. We made the difference together. She stopped walking and pulled him close, kissing him under the stars. Partners, equals, just like you promised from the beginning. Always, he murmured against her lips. For as many centuries as we have. 5 years passed in what felt like both an eternity and an instant. Aria's daughters grew, thrived, and eventually learned the truth about their mother's transformation. Emma, now 14, took it with scientific fascination. The twins, 11 now, thought it was incredibly cool that their mom was a vampire. "Does this mean we can be vampires too?" Lily asked eagerly. "When you're older and ready to make that choice for yourself," Aria said. "It's not something to decide lightly." The girls had been told they could choose transformation when they reached adulthood if they wanted it. Until then, Aria and Valerian worked to give them as normal a childhood as possible: school, friends, activities, all the things human children should have. Aria's work had expanded beyond Valerian's court. She now ran a consulting firm that specialized in human-vampire relations, helping other territories establish integration programs and navigate the complexities of modern mixed societies. She had become respected in both human and vampire circles. Proof that transformation didn't mean abandoning humanity, it meant bringing the best of both worlds together. Valerian's territory had become a model for progressive vampire governance. They hosted conferences, published guidelines, and actively worked to break down the old prejudices that had kept the species apart. Not everyone approved, but the results spoke for themselves. On a cool evening in early spring, exactly 6 years after Aria had first walked up to Thornhaven Estate desperate and exhausted, Valerian planned something special. He arranged for Mrs. Chen to take the girls for the weekend and led Aria to a rooftop garden he'd created atop the estate, a space filled with night-blooming flowers and soft lights that mimicked starlight. "I wanted to mark this anniversary," he said as they stood looking out over the city. 6 years ago, a brave woman asked me for work instead of charity. She had no idea she was about to change my entire existence." "I had no idea you were about to change mine," Aria said, smiling. "I thought I was just trying to survive. I didn't know I was going to find everything I'd ever wanted." Valerian took both her hands in his. "These 6 years have been the most meaningful of my entire existence. You've given me purpose, partnership, love, things I'd stopped believing were possible for me. And I want to spend every remaining century making sure you never regret trusting me with your life." He sank to one knee and Aria's breath caught. "Aria Donovan, will you marry me? Will you be my partner not just in work and survival but in every aspect of existence? Will you be my queen in heart and title for as long as we both exist?" Tears red-tinged now, the only kind vampires could cry, welled in Aria's eyes. "Yes, yes, of course yes." The ring he slid onto her finger was an antique ruby surrounded by diamonds, beautiful and regal and perfect. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him with all the love and joy and gratitude that had been building for 6 years. "I love you," she said when they finally broke apart. "I loved you when I was human and desperate, and I love you now that I'm strong and stable. I'll love you through whatever centuries we have." "And I love you," Valerian replied, his voice rough with emotion. "My fierce, brilliant queen, you asked for work, and I gave you everything because you deserved everything, and more." They married a month later in a ceremony that blended vampire tradition with human custom. Emma served as Aria's maid of honor. The twins were flower girls, and Mrs. Chen cried happy tears throughout the entire event. The guest list included both human friends and vampire dignitaries, a perfect representation of the world they'd worked to build. As Aria stood beside Valerian during the ceremony, speaking vows that promised eternity rather than "till death do us part," she reflected on how far she'd come. She'd walked into Thornhaven Estate 6 years ago with nothing but desperation and determination. She'd left with a job, with hope, with the first glimpse of the future she now lived. She'd begged a vampire king for work, and he'd given her both work and charity, though she understood now that it was never charity. It was recognition. It was respect. It was the beginning of love. And now she stood beside him as his equal, his partner, his queen. Her daughters were healthy and happy. Her work made a real difference in the world. Her life was full of purpose and meaning and love that would last for centuries to come. When Valerian kissed her at the end of the ceremony, sealing their bond in front of everyone who mattered to them, Aria sent a silent thank you to the desperate, exhausted woman she'd been 6 years ago. That woman had been brave enough to walk through gates that should have terrified her, to ask for help from beings that could have destroyed her, to fight for her family's survival no matter the cost. That woman had saved them all by being willing to work for her future, instead of waiting for someone to hand it to her. And now that future stretched before her, bright and endless and full of love. The reception lasted until dawn, when the vampire guests had to retreat to protected quarters. Aria and Valerian stood together watching the sky lighten from dark to pale blue, knowing they had only minutes before they too would need to seek shelter from the sun. "No regrets?" Valerian asked softly. "Not a single one, you?" Only that I didn't find you centuries ago." He pulled her close. "But perhaps the timing was perfect. Perhaps I needed to live those centuries to appreciate what I found in you. And perhaps I needed to struggle through those years to recognize what you offered when I found it." They went inside as the first rays of sunlight touched Rahazan, retreating to their private quarters where blackout curtains kept the deadly light at bay. Aria's daughters were staying with friends, giving her and Valerian time alone to begin their married life. As they lay together in the darkness that vampires called home, Aria felt complete in a way she never had before. Her journey from desperate single mother to vampire queen had been long and often difficult, but every step had led her here to this moment, this person, this perfect future. She'd asked for work. She'd received so much more: love, partnership, eternity. And it had all started with the courage to walk through those gates and refuse to be diminished by her circumstances. "What are you thinking?" Valerian asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That I'm grateful for every difficult moment that led me to you. That I'd do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant ending up here. You're incredible, do you know that? The strongest person I've ever met, human or vampire. I learned from the best." She kissed him softly. "My king, my love, my everything, my queen," he murmured back. "My unexpected gift. The woman who walked into my life asking for work and gave me a reason to live instead." They held each other as the sun rose over the city, as their human employees arrived to handle daytime business, as the world continued turning outside their darkened sanctuary. Inside, in the safety of their love and the security they'd built together, they rested, and when night fell again, they would rise together partners, equals, lovers, rulers of a court that represented the best of both their worlds. Aria Donovan had begged the Vampire King for work. He'd given her both work and charity. But more than that, he'd given her a future beyond anything she could have imagined. And she'd given him something equally precious in return: hope, humanity, and a love that would endure for centuries to come. Their story was just beginning, but already it was extraordinary. A testament to courage, determination, and the transformative power of seeing someone not for what they were, but for what they could become. Together, they would build something beautiful. Together they would prove that differences in species, lifespan, and power didn't matter when two people were willing to meet each other as equals. Together they would change their world. And it had all started with a desperate woman, 3 hungry children, and a vampire king who chose to see worth where others saw only weakness. It had started with work and charity and ended with everything.